Revealed, the incredible journey of a homeless woman who became a mother to the rich rancher's dreams. In a bustling Midwestern town, where the sunset painted the horizon with hues of orange and purple, Claire's story began. Once a nurse, a figurative guardian angel to her patients, she now wandered the streets, a shadow of who she once was. Life had dealt her a cruel hand, job loss, betrayal, and the shattering of her mother's home. Yet, Claire was fierce, a survivor walking an unyielding path. Each day blended into the next, a fight against despair as she scavenged for scraps of food and fleeting moments of dignity. Still, she pressed on, a gritty testament to resilience. One day, she stumbled upon an abandoned ranch, its sprawling golden fields swaying in the wind like a sea of forgotten dreams. The solitude wrapped around her like a warm blanket, nudging the weight of her troubles aside, if only for a heartbeat. This ranch, lonely and neglected, resonated against the symphony of her struggles. As she wandered through the neglected barns and empty pastures, a glimmer of hope sparked within her. Before she could embrace her thoughts, Jake, the affluent rancher and caretaker of this once thriving estate, found her. With a polished look that betrayed the loneliness behind it, he was grappling with his own set of demons, expectations that felt like chains clanking against his soul. His first instinct was to shoo her away, yet something about Claire drew him in, her warmth igniting something buried within. Their connection blossomed innocently amidst late-night talks under the starlit sky, where laughter painted the air with shades of gold. As they sifted through shared stories, her struggles and his burdens, the world beyond became a whisper. Claire's fiery spirit brought colors to Jake's gray days, reminding him of joys he'd long forgotten. For the first time in years, he felt alive, and she began to see whispers of belonging amid the shadows of her past, but this newfound bond wasn't without scrutiny. The whispers of society echoed harshly around them, ribbing at their flesh, sowing seeds of doubt. Claire, with all her fire, braved the churning tension, standing tall against the winds of prejudice. In a moment that felt sewn from the fabric of dreams, she sang a haunting melody that spoke of struggle and hope, its echoes resonating through the town like thunder. Tears filled the eyes of onlookers, and suddenly, Claire was more than just a nameless face. She was a voice of unity, connecting hearts in one solid pulse. Just as the world began to shift around them, doubts clawed their way into Jake's mind. The very tides that had once pushed him toward Claire now threatened to pull them apart. Claire, hurt by the misgivings, faced a heartbreaking realization. Would Jake's privilege blind him to her worth? The community watched, some with relish, some with anticipation, as their worlds began to collapse together, a story ripe with the promise of transformation. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With every fiber of her being, Claire fought against the shadows that clung to her with a tenacity sharper than barbed wire. And in that struggle, when she stepped forward, claiming her worth, the air thickened with anticipation. Yet as the distance between them stretched, so did the chasms in their hearts. Could love and understanding ever bridge two worlds so starkly apart? The question lingered like a haunting refrain, poised to ignite the even fiercer fire of their destinies. Claire stood at the worn fence of the abandoned ranch, her heart pounding as she watched the sun dip below the horizon. It felt like the world was against them, each flicker of daylight pulling her further away from Jake. She couldn't shake the feeling that their bond was hanging by a thread, fraying with every judgmental glance from townsfolk. The whispers had started up again, swirling like a storm around her, always just loud enough to stoke her insecurities. With a deep breath, she picked a piece of wildflower from the ground, twirling it between her fingers. This little bloom was a reminder of her strength, of nature thriving even against the odds. "I need to believe I matter," she murmured to herself. Just as the sun set, she felt her spirit being swallowed up, shadows creeping in to claim her heart. That night, Jake found her in the barn, surrounded by memories of happier times. Seeing her sitting as dusk surrounded her, he felt both drawn and terrified. He leaned against the doorframe, taking in her fragile beauty, but doubt gnawed at him like an unforgiving beast. "Claire," he ventured, his voice low. She looked up, eyes shimmering with unspoken feelings, echoing the confusion in his heart. "Jake, we need to talk," she said. Each word broke the stillness, heavier than the first snowfall of winter. He stepped closer, sensing a shift in the air, the tension vibrating between them. "I know things have been difficult," he replied, searching for the right words. "My world it's filled with expectations I've tried to escape. But you." His voice trailed off as he struggled to bridge the gap between their realities. "I can feel you pulling away," she confessed, her voice quivering. "It's like you're held back by something you can't shake." "Is it me?" The vulnerability in her voice cut into him like a blade. "No," Jake exclaimed, the desperation clear on his face. "It's not you. You've opened my eyes to so much." But he hesitated. "They will never see you as I do. I don't want to lose you to their judgment." Claire's heart ached at his admission. Did he truly believe that? She could feel the distance widening, an invisible boundary that society had built around them, encasing both their hearts. "Jake, I'm not asking for acceptance. I just need you to see my worth far beyond their eyes." A silence enveloped them, heavy with unexpressed fears and dreams that seemed too big to grasp. The moonlight slipped through the barn's cracks, illuminating the tension that swirled around them. Jake's hands trembled slightly as he reached for her, bridging the gap. "I want to fight for this for us." But even as he said the words, doubt clawed at his mind. Could he shoulder the burden of a life entwined with hers amidst the town's harsh judgment? Then, suddenly, Claire stepped into the light with renewed courage. "Let us show them. Let South turn this place into a home, where dreams are free." Inspiration sparked in her voice, igniting something in Jake. "Can we do that?" he whispered, hope cautiously threading through their despair. "We should try," she replied, a defiant smile breaking through the clouds of uncertainty that surrounded them, but just as the embers of their resolve began to glow, an unexpected knock echoed through the barn. A shadow loomed at the entrance, a figure familiar yet daunting. Would this uninvited presence be the final blow, or could it become the ally they desperately needed? The thrill of uncertainty left them breathless, teetering on the edge of change. The figure at the entrance stepped forward, casting a long shadow that momentarily swallowed the light. Claire's breath caught in her throat as she recognized the familiar silhouette. It was Lila, her childhood friend, the one person who had moved away years ago in search of a life she always longed for. The surprise in Claire's eyes mingled with a whirlwind of emotions: joy, fear, and a hint of retreat. "Claire! I can't believe you're here!" Lila exclaimed, closing the distance swiftly. But the happiness in her voice faltered as she took in the state of the barn, the flickers of vulnerability in her friend. "What happened?" Jake stood back, feeling like an intruder as the two women embraced. He watched Claire dissolve into Lila's arms, the warmth between them shining with a history he wouldn't fully understand. The shadows around him stretched, reflecting his own uncertainties and the complexities he had yet to face. "Let me guess," Lila said, stepping back to examine Claire's face, "things aren't going as planned." There was a softness in her voice, an understanding that set Claire's heart at ease. "It's complicated," Claire admitted, glancing at Jake, who remained hovering at the edge of their reunion. He didn't know what to say, how to fit into this emotional landscape that had just expanded to include Lila's presence. "I know how it feels to fight against the world," Lila continued, her grip on Claire's shoulder firm. "I've been there. But you can't let the past drag you down. You deserve to chase what makes you happy." "I'm trying," Claire whispered, the weight of her struggle slipping into Lila's understanding gaze. Lila's smile faded, replaced with a seriousness that made Claire's stomach knot. "And what about him?" She nodded toward Jake, her eyes scanning the tension that lingered like thick fog. "Does he really see you?" "Jake sees me," Claire replied, her voice steady, though her heart was not. But the town. They won't accept us. Let them talk. Heartbreak can mend when friendship stands strong, Lila said, her words a lifeline thrown between them. Suddenly, a distant rumble of thunder echoed, turning the air electric as raindrops began to patter violently against the barn roof. Lightning flashed, illuminating their faces with wild intensity. The storm felt like a backdrop to the turmoil brewing inside Claire. Maybe you should come home with me, Lila suggested, her eyes sparkling. I know it won't be easy, but with me at your side, we can face the judgment together. Claire hesitated, glancing at Jake, whose expression was unreadable. Did she want to leave him? Did she want to leave this ranch they had both envisioned turning into something beautiful? But the thought of retreat was tempting, a seductive siren song of safety. Please, Lila urged, drawing Claire's focus back fully. Trust me, Claire. Just like old times. We can rebuild. Trust, Claire murmured, allowing the word to hang heavy in the tense air like the weight of the storm outside. Was she ready to risk everything just for the illusion of escape? Jake cleared his throat, stepping into the light. I want to support you, Claire. But where is home anymore? Caught in the turmoil of their emotions, Claire felt as though the world was closing in on her, each choice pregnant with consequences. Could she abandon the fight they started together, or should she rise to meet this chance Lila offered and forge a new path? As the rain beat harder down, a fierce determination ignited within Claire. I want to make my own choices, she declared, glancing back at the growing storm. And just then, another knock rapped against the barn door, this time louder, more insistent, a sound that seemed to echo the dilemmas swirling in Claire's heart. What could possibly await them outside at the end of this tumultuous night? The air in the barn grew thick with a tension that felt almost tangible. The knock on the door echoed like the thrumming of Claire's heart, a rhythm born of uncertainty and hope. The sound demanded their attention, pulling them away from the weight of their choices. Jake glanced between Claire and Lila, his brow furrowing. Should we answer that? His voice was hesitant, barely loud enough to cut through the rain's relentless drumming. Maybe it's just the storm, Lila suggested, though a flicker of doubt crossed her face. She turned, uncertainty mingling with anticipation in her eyes. Claire took a step toward the door, drawn by an instinct she couldn't quite articulate. I need to know, she said, her voice steady, though the tremor in her hands betrayed her. This was a moment that could shift everything. As she reached for the door, the wind howled outside, rattling the barn's frame. Another knock resounded, sharper this time. With a deep breath, Claire grasped the handle and pulled it open. A figure stood silhouetted against the storm, rain cascading from the brim of a wide hat. Claire squinted against the bright flash of lightning that framed him for an instant. The moment stretched, each heartbeat echoing in the silence. Jack. Claire almost whispered, her eyes widening in disbelief as she recognized the ranch hand from her childhood. He had been a quiet presence, always there but often unnoticed. Yet now he stood soaked and weary, a battered messenger from a world she thought might have left her behind. Claire, he said, his voice strained but hopeful. He stepped inside, shaking off the rain like a dog, his eyes scanning the interior of the barn till they landed on Lila. I didn't expect to find you here. I have to tell you both something important. What is going on? Lila asked sharply, suddenly on edge. They've rallied at the town hall, Jack said, wiping his brow with a drenched sleeve. There's a lot of talk about your relationship with Jake, Claire. They want to make it a bigger issue. A wave of anxiety swept over Claire. What do you mean? The council is talking about enforcing some old town regulations. They want to drive a wedge between you two. It's not just about gossip anymore. Jack's words felt like bricks, piling on top of her already heavy heart. Claire felt the room spin, a swell of anger bubbling inside her. It wasn't enough for the town to murmur behind their backs, now, they aimed to control her life. I can't let them do that, she said, feeling a fire ignite. What are you going to do? Jake asked, stepping closer, concern etched on his face. She could see the fight in his eyes, mirroring her own. "It's time to stand up," Claire declared, the determination in her voice cutting through the storm's chaos. "If they want to make this a fight, then let us fight. Together." Lila's expression ignited with a fierce pride. "That's right, Claire. We'll face them. You won't be alone." But as they gathered their resolve, Jack's brow tightened in worry. "Just know, taking a stand could have consequences. People will choose sides." Claire glanced at Jake, seeing his uncertainty reflected in his eyes. She felt the weight of the decision ahead. Did she have the strength to stand up in front of the town that had already judged her? "Will you stand with me?" she asked him, searching for affirmation in his gaze. As the storm raged on outside, the tension in the barn seemed to crackle with the weight of decisions yet to come. Claire was ready, but support was fragile like the storm raging outside. And yet, beneath the uncertainty, hope gleamed, fragile but persistent. What awaited them if Claire took that leap? Would the town's judgment bring them closer or tear them apart? The air thrummed, and Claire knew the path before her was anything but easy. But the next question echoed in her mind as she prepared to face that storm: what if standing up meant risking everything she had fought for? Claire felt the weight of Jack's warning settle deep in her chest. The town wasn't just gossiping now, they were readying for war. Each whispered word behind her back became a blow, and she knew that whatever came next would change everything. "Claire," Jake's voice broke through her thoughts, grounding her in the present. "You don't have to do this alone, but we need a plan. We can't just charge into a fight without thinking it through." Lila stepped in, her hands on her hips, eyes blazing with determination. "We'll gather support. Talk to people who know how unfair this is. There are folks here who will stand with you." Claire felt a flicker of hope igniting in her heart. Could they really rally others behind her? The weight of their judgment had loomed over her for so long, but she remembered the kindness from some who defended her, people who cheered for her unconditionally. "Every single one counts, Lila," she replied, her resolve hardening. "I never asked for this fight. But if they want to push me away from Jake, from my life, then I'll show them they can't just dictate who I love. I won't hide anymore." "All right then," Jake said, nodding, a spark of admiration in his eyes. "But we'll need to be strategic. Let us meet on neutral ground, away from prying eyes." Jack shifted uneasily. "And it might be worth discussing this with your families. If you're going to do this, you might need their backing too. Think of your dad." Claire felt her stomach drop. "My dad." The tension between them had been fraught the last few months, and the idea of dragging family into this made her uneasy. "Do you really think they would support me in this?" "I think it's worth a shot," Jake urged gently. "This could show them you're not the girl who walks the line they expect. You're your own woman." Claire couldn't let her father's views suffocate her spirit anymore. It was time for her to stand in her truth, no matter how many waves it stirred. As they strategized, piecing together a plan of action, the wind rattled the barn, revealing the storm was nothing compared to the tempest brewing in Claire's heart. Thoughts of the town council and their judgments loomed over her like clouds, threatening another downpour of hopelessness. "We can start by gathering everyone tonight," Lila suggested. "Make it a town meeting. We put them on the spot, hold them accountable." "Tonight," Claire echoed, the idea spinning in her mind. "It doesn't give us much time to prepare. But if we wait they'll gain more ground to push us out," Jake finished for her. Her heart raced as the reality of their plan sank in. Tonight, she would face the townsfolk who could either support her or vilify her. The prospect of standing before them, bearing her soul, made her pulse race. Would they see her truth or the twisted tales that had defined her for too long? "I'll do it," Claire said, her voice steady despite the roar of uncertainty in her chest. "I'm ready." Jack gave her a hesitant smile. "Then we'll all be there, every step of the way." As they finished their preparations, the storm's winds howled like an omen through the barn's creaking wood. Claire felt the anticipation rise like a tide within her, the approaching storm too powerful to ignore. With an hour left until they faced the townsfolk, Claire ran a hand down her face, the enormity of the moment crashing over her. The world felt full of possibilities and consequences, a dance between hope and fear. Could they really make a difference? Or would the storm tear them apart entirely? Just as she gathered her thoughts, a shout echoed from outside, slicing through the weighty silence of the barn. A commotion. The sound pulled everyone's attention to the door. What now? Her heart in her throat, Claire could only hope the night wouldn't become a battleground for fear and judgment. Whatever lay behind that door, she felt an eerie certainty that their lives were about to change forever. Would they step back into the protective shadows of their souls, or embrace the light they dared to create together? The moment the door swung open, the chatter from outside stepped in with a gust of frigid air. Claire's heart raced. A group of townspeople stood just beyond the threshold, their expressions a kaleidoscope of confusion and concern. "What's going on?" Lila blurted, rushing toward the doorway and shielding Claire with her body. A moment of silence washed over the barn. The townsfolk hesitated, their gazes flitting from Claire's determined face to the backdrop of the barn, as though weighing their options. Then a tall woman named Martha, who had always seemed to harbor strong opinions about Claire's choices, took a step forward. "We heard shouting," she said, her voice a blend of skepticism and worry. "What's happening here?" "Just a strategy session," Jake said smoothly, striding to Claire's side, his presence steadfast. "We're getting ready for tonight's meeting." "Planning for what?" A man from the crowd called out, his brow knitted. Claire took a deep breath, feeling the weight of their eyes on her, like a stage performer standing under the spotlight. But tonight, she wouldn't cower. "To stand up for what's right," she said, her voice steady, cutting through the tension. Martha frowned, crossing her arms. "And what exactly is that?" "We need answers, Claire. People are talking." The murmurs from the crowd swelled, some whispering in support while others shot disapproving looks at Claire. Her hands clenched at her sides, and tension gripped her heart. But she pressed on. "It's about love, about being accepted for who we are. I'm tired of pretending to fit into a mold that isn't me. We deserve a community that accepts us." Jack stood behind her, his support palpable. "Tonight will be about change. Claire wants to share her story, and we want to hear yours, too." "Change?" Martha scoffed, but Claire could see a flicker of ambivalence in her gaze. "What makes you think we want your change?" "Because you're here," Jake replied, refusing to back down. "You care enough to listen. That counts for something." The wind outside shrieked as if echoing the urgency of the moment. Claire glanced at each face before her, searching for the courage echoing in her heart. "I know it's hard to look at me and see beyond the rumors. But I'm not just a name whispered behind closed doors. I'm Claire. I stand before you today, hoping we can embrace the truth together." There was a ripple in the crowd. She noticed a few nodding while others looked away, unsure. Every second felt like a lifetime as seconds ticked by. Hesitation hung thick in the air. "Tonight?" Martha asked, her voice softer now, a hint of vulnerability creeping in. "Yes, tonight," Claire responded, her heartbeat steadying as a sense of solidarity began to build. "Come listen. Be part of this change. We can begin to heal together." The tension in the room shifted slightly, new murmurs blossoming amongst them, this time mingled with curiosity. One woman stepped forward, a soft expression replacing her earlier scowl. I think we can try." The hope that blossomed in Claire's chest felt fragile but beautiful. As she exchanged glances with her friends, she understood they were all standing on the cusp of something monumental. "Then we'll see you tonight," Lila added, her tone infectious. "Bring your stories, your truths. Let us stand together." With every passing moment, the possibility of acceptance danced closer, as if the previous fear was merely a shadow loosening its grip. And what if it doesn't work? A man suddenly piped up from the back, skepticism thick in his tone. Claire turned to him, her heart racing again but fueled with purpose. Then we'll keep trying. Together. That's the only way to start a real change, right? As the crowd began to disperse, whispers filled the air, some laced with doubt, some with seeds of courage. But Claire felt the tide shift inside her, an invigorating promise of transformation igniting her spirit. With a deep breath, she knew they were headed into uncharted waters for themselves and their town. Would the wave of change they sought carry them forward or drown them in the very fears they'd fought against? As she turned back toward her friends, the door creaked closed behind them, and she caught a glimpse of the storm brewing in the distance, a storm that mirrored the turmoil in her soul. Whatever awaited them tonight, the winds of change were swirling, and Claire could almost taste it in the air. But, deep down, she wondered, would it be a welcome rain or an unforgiving tempest? The sun was setting, casting an orange glow over the barn as Claire turned to her friends. She felt a mixture of anticipation and anxiety pooling in her stomach. Tonight's meeting was their chance to bridge the divide, to show that change was possible. "Are you ready?" Lila asked, brushing a loose strand of hair behind her ear. The warmth of her voice steadied Claire, giving her a moment to reflect. "I don't know if ready is the right word," Claire admitted. "But I have to do this." As they gathered the materials for the meeting, posters and flyers, with Claire's story prominently displayed, Claire caught a glimpse of the townspeople outside, trickling away in clusters. She wished every one of them could understand her, could see that beyond the rumors and the walls they'd built, there lay a world of shared pain and hope. "Claire, you're going to change minds tonight," Jake said, appearing by her side, his smile a blend of encouragement and warmth. "Believe in what you're doing." She smiled back, but doubt flickered in her mind. What if those very minds chose to turn away instead? She had fought so hard to reclaim her life. Was she ready to open up to a room full of people who may not want to listen? The entrance of a storm surged in her heart, almost overwhelming. "Remember, we're all here with you," Lila said, sensing the tremor. "Whatever happens, we'll face it together." With one last look at the diminishing sunlight outside, they made their way to the community hall. The air was thick with unspoken questions as they entered, the ambience charged with chatter that faltered once they walked through the door. It was time to share their truth. As Claire stood before the gathering, she swallowed hard. Her throat felt tight, the weight of every stare pressing down on her. She cleared her throat, the nervousness mingling with excitement. "Thank you for coming," she began, her voice gaining strength with each passing moment. "Tonight is about understanding. It's time we really talk about who we all are." The atmosphere shifted, the tension palpable yet tinged with anticipation. Claire shared her story, from the struggles she had faced to how she had found herself again. With each word, she unveiled layers of vulnerability, pouring out her heart for them to see, but as she spoke, not everyone absorbed her narrative with open hearts. Martha's frown deepened, the glint of disapproval palpable. Claire wondered how to crack the surface of that hardened exterior. "Do you expect us to just accept this?" Martha finally shot back, anger lacing her voice. "To just let go of all we've known?" Claire hesitated, her heart pounding. "No, I don't expect anything from you, but wouldn't it be better to try?" The crowd remained silent, weighing her words. Claire glanced around, searching for support. In that gaze, she found sympathy from a few familiar faces that had come to know her struggles, but still, doubt lingered. "Maybe it is scary to embrace the unknown," Lila chimed in, trying to bridge the divide. "But we can be courageous together." The first flickers of conversation began to ignite in the crowd again, sparking somewhere within the hesitation. Conversations bubbled as folks began to process Claire's vulnerability. Some looked down, wrestling with their beliefs, while others began to nod ever so slightly, but just as hope began to seep into the room, the doors flew open. A group of resistant voices entered, faces taut with anger. "We can't let this happen." One man bellowed, cutting through the already fragile atmosphere. Claire's heart sank as doubts threatened to consume her once more. The true storm was only beginning. She braced herself, knowing what would come next would define everything she had fought for. Are we really ready to change? She thought as the heated voices clashed, fear clawing at her. This was just the beginning. Would her bravery shine through, or would it all come crashing down? The room fell into a tense silence as the newcomers disrupted the fragile atmosphere that had started to form. Claire could feel the heat radiating from the heated protesting crowd behind her, an angry force spilling forth like a dam bursting. Her thoughts raced. Would they drown out her voice or could she rise above? What do you think you're doing? The man who had bellowed earlier stepped forward, his tone sharp and ready to slice. His eyes swept over Claire, disdain oozing from his every feature. These stories, they're not welcome here. Some voices from Claire's supporters broke out in a protective chorus, please. Let her speak. But the noise was drowned by the onslaught of dissent. Martha's expression twisted with an unsettling mix of confusion and anger. You want us to believe in your fairy tale while our reality crumbles. The heart of the crowd felt heavy, and Claire's resolve flickered. This was not just about her anymore. This was about the tension that entwined their lives, all the fears they carried, and the walls built from misunderstanding. She drew a deep breath, letting it fill her lungs, feeling faintly empowered by it. I'm not trying to convince you to believe my story, Claire said, her voice resolute. I'm asking for a chance to be understood, for all of us to be understood. With every word, she felt the tremble of her heart steady, building momentum. We've all faced something terrifying, whether it's losing your home, your way, or your identity. I stand here today to show you that hope isn't a fairy tale, it's a healing journey. Her eyes flickered to Lila, who nodded reassuringly, her unwavering support lighting up Claire's heart once more. Here was a room filled with history and pain woven together, perhaps they all just needed to see one another, truly see that. A young woman, who had been listening quietly, lowered her head. With a shaky voice, she spoke up. What if we lost our community? What if everything we've known slips away? The question shook through the room, resonating like a bell tolling. Claire understood the fear lying beneath it, the sentiment that gripped at people's hearts. Change is daunting, Claire replied softly. But to forsake someone else's life for your comfort isn't living. At the end of all this, we could find a way to grow together, to be together. Isn't that the ultimate goal? Moments stretched into silence as Claire's words hung heavily in the air. The crowd was grappling with something vast, something beyond just acceptance. This was about courage, uncertainty, and ultimately, community. Jake stepped forward, his voice strong among the shifting tides. This is about healing. We all want to belong somewhere. Isn't it time we start building that together? The room stirred as a few murmurs of agreement broke through, but it was still a battle, the odds leaning towards uncertainty, and then, as if sensing the tipping point, the man from the protest stepped closer, his eyes narrowing. You're naive if you think people will just change overnight, Claire. For a moment, she felt the ground shift beneath her, her heart racing again. Was she being naive? Maybe, she replied slowly, but that's the first step towards something beautiful, a future where we can coexist, where we can share our stories. Murmurs grew more animated around her, the emotions swirling like a storm seeking shelter. Hope and anger collided, but Claire's voice was a steady lighthouse in the chaos. You have a choice. We all do. To build walls or bridges. But just as wills began to spiral into conversation, she sensed a deeper conflict brewing. Behind the crowd, whispers started, plotting perhaps an end before a beginning. What happens next? She wondered, looking into the crowd, searching for faith in uneasy eyes. Did they want to build bridges as much as she did, or were they scared to let go of the old ways? Claire knew she was standing at a pivotal moment. Just then, the light flickered in the hall, casting shadows that danced menacingly along the walls. The storm of voices encroached, pulling her deeper into uncertainty. Were they really ready to challenge their beliefs? Would they step into the light with her? The real question lingered, heavy with consequence, as she silently begged for understanding. In that charged silence, she pondered the fate of their community and her own heart. The night wore on, and Claire's resolve would face another test. She felt the storm brewing inside her but also in the hearts of everyone present. How would it all culminate in the next moments? The truth was still waiting to be revealed. The air in the room thickened, pregnant with uncertainty. Claire sensed the weight of the crowd's ambivalence. She gripped the edge of the podium, her knuckles whitening as she gathered her thoughts. "You say I'm naive," she began, locking eyes with the man who had spoken disparagingly. "But maybe naivety isn't the issue. Maybe we're all longing for a bit of hope amid this chaos." The man scoffed, but Claire pressed on, a fierce determination rising within her. "We cling to our pain, our fears, because it's all we know. But what if we could let some of it go? What if suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the back of the room, cutting off her words. A chair had toppled over, sending a ripple of surprise through the audience. Claire's heart raced as her gaze turned towards the sound, recognizing the bewildered face of an older man, his expression one of alarm. "See? This is what I mean," he shouted, gesturing wildly. "Every time we try to come together, chaos follows. How can we trust?" Murmurs filled the space, and Claire's heart sank. Would they be too consumed by fear to listen? "Trust isn't given freely, it's built," she replied, her voice rising again, pushing through the din of opinions. "It's built over time, with stories shared, with understanding embraced. But we have to start somewhere." A young girl in the front row offered a hesitant nod, her eyes wide with courage. "Can we at least try?" she whispered, glancing nervously at her neighbors. The hesitant questions continued to bounce around the room like popcorn hitting the ceiling. A chorus of what-ifs intermingled with shouts of skepticism. But amid the cacophony, Claire caught sight of Lila, her old friend, standing steadfast with a knowing smile. That reminder of their shared journeys reignited something inside her, an ember of strength she thought had flickered out. "All right," Claire said, her voice rising like the sun breaking through clouds. "Let us start by sharing a story. One story. We all have them, stories of loss and love and hope. I'll go first." The crowd quieted, curiosity winning over hostility. Claire took a breath, feeling the rush of memory wash over her. "I remember the first time I had to leave my home. I was terrified, but I promised myself I wouldn't lose who I was. I held on to that promise as tight as I could." Her voice softened as she continued. "When I had nowhere to go, I met others just like me. We lifted each other up. We became family. Those connections changed everything. When people have nothing, they discover what truly matters each other." As she spoke, she saw heads nodding across the room. Something was shifting. These weren't just words, they were a mirror reflecting their struggles back at them, making them see their worries echoed in one another. "Let us hear from someone else," Claire said, her heart pounding with both anxiety and hope. "Who wants to share?" A tense silence hung in the air, and Claire felt the tension return. But slowly, a woman in the back raised her hand, her voice barely above a whisper. I lost my brother last year. He was my best friend." Claire nodded encouragingly, and all eyes turned toward the woman, now drawing strength from Claire's courage. With every word, the crowd began to shift, apprehensions melting into empathy, but just as more hands began to emerge, Claire felt a shift at the door. A figure stepped into the light, a tall man whose presence demanded attention. It was someone she recognized. The whispers returned, but this time, curiosity tinged with fear traveled through the room. "Who is that?" someone murmured. Claire's heart raced. This man had the power to either bridge the growing gap or shatter it. What could he possibly want here now? As he approached the podium, the tension in the air reached a dizzying peak. Claire breathed in deeply, every muscle clenched, every eye fixated on him as she silently begged, would he join their fight for unity, or would he stamp it out before it got a chance to take root? The moment felt electric. Everything hung in the balance: hope, fear, and possibility swirling like currents in a river desperate to flow onward. What would he say? And how would it change the course of their evening? The man stepped up, his face partially shadowed beneath the brim of his hat. The murmurs quieted, a heavy silence enveloping the room. Claire held her breath, heart pounding as she prepared for confrontation or support. He cleared his throat, voice resonating with weight. "I'm George, and well, I'm here for my son." The tension in the room shifted slightly as eyes darted between George and Claire. "I've heard rumors about you and Jake. And honestly at first, I didn't understand." He steadied himself, searching their faces, his own showing vulnerability. "But I've been listening. And what I've heard has made me rethink everything." Claire blinked, confusion washing over her. Was this a trick? George took a deep breath, fortifying himself, tapping into courage that seemed hard-won. "I've learned that when you're stubbornly holding on to the past, like I have, you start to blind yourself to the future. I can't make my son's choices for him. He has to choose his own path." A spark began to flicker in the crowd, murmurs of understanding surfacing. George continued, his voice gaining momentum. "Everyone here carries their own story. They've suffered losses, experiences, and it's taken a toll on all of us. I want my son to know who he truly loves, regardless of what other people think." Claire felt warmth spread in her chest, hope unfurling like a flower in sunlight. "I want us to be a community that sticks together, not one that tears each other apart." "Exactly!" Claire exclaimed, emboldened by his words. She glanced around, eyes landing on familiar faces. People nodded, their eyes softening. "It doesn't matter where we come from or the mistakes we've made. We can all grow." George stepped down, and the buzz in the air expanded, a wave of connection igniting among them. A few others began to share, weaving tales of hardship and hearts mending slowly, like cracks being filled. Each voice added depth, creating a tapestry of lives intertwined. Claire could feel the walls crumble, her spirit soaring. This was unity, the way forward, the change they all yearned for. Lila squeezed her hand, radiating pride. "You're doing it, Claire." "I never knew I could feel this way," another voice chimed in. "I thought I'd be alone forever." As stories poured forth, Claire felt in her bones that something was shifting. The tides were turning, hearts opening wide as they embraced vulnerability and connection. They were no longer isolated shadows in their struggles, but a collective force ready to face the world. Then, Martha spoke up, her voice shaky yet sincere. "I didn't see it before. We've been so harsh with each other. It's time to find a way to build a community that supports every single one of us." The room erupted in murmurs, exchanging glances filled with understanding. Claire's heart swelled, a deep ache of happiness and love coursing through her. With newfound courage, she stepped forward, passion igniting her words. "Each of us deserves love, acceptance, and the chance to shine without fear. Let us forge a future that nurtures those dreams." A ripple of agreement coursed through the crowd, smiles breaking into a cascade of relief. They were ready to move forward together, united. The night wore on, laughter, tears, and stories intertwining, building a new foundation from the ashes of sorrow and judgment. Outside, rain started to fall lightly, a cleansing touch, a promise of renewal. As Claire took a moment to breathe it all in, she caught Jake's eye across the room. He approached her, his expression tender, full of admiration. "You did this," he said, emotion filling the space between them. "I can't believe how far you've come." Claire smiled through tears of joy, her heart full. "We did this together." And just like that, as they stood side by side beneath the glow of the community hall, they could already feel the winds of change swirling around, a future filled with hope, love, and acceptance blossoming right before their eyes. You need to subscribe now to witness more incredible transformations like this. This is the moment to show your support by hitting that like button. Comment below your reactions and feelings about this powerful ending, and don't wait not even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this transformation. Your support makes all the difference.